She was married the entire time. I was her second husband and didn't know for 7 years. When I found out, I confronted her. She just smiled and said, "You were just a backup, but now it's her turn to lose everything." I remember the day like it was yesterday. It was a Saturday morning, the kind of morning where the world feels at peace, everything in its place. The kids were still asleep. Elena was in the kitchen making pancakes, and I was sitting at the dining table, sipping my coffee, flipping through a few emails before the weekend really kicked in. Our life together had always been steady, 7 years of marriage of which I thought I knew everything about Elena. We weren't perfect, of course. There were times we disagreed, times when the silence between us was heavier than we'd liked. But that's normal, isn't it? Every relationship has its ups and downs. I figured we were just like any other couple. But as I sat there that morning, the smell of bacon in the air, something far more sinister was about to shatter that illusion. The doorbell rang. I glanced at the clock. 8:30 a.m. Who could be at the door this early? I stood up, stretching, still half distracted by the thoughts in my head. I didn't recognize the man standing outside. He was wearing a uniform, official looking, a mailman perhaps. But there was something about his posture, the way he stood there holding an envelope, that made me uneasy. "Mr. Daniel Carter?" he asked, looking at the clipboard in his hand. "That's me," I replied, puzzled. He handed me the envelope. It was large, thick, and sealed with the kind of wax I only associated with formal legal documents. There was something about it that immediately set off an alarm in my chest. It wasn't a letter from the bank, not a bill, not a package, nothing mundane. This was serious. I thanked him, and he nodded curtly before walking away. As I closed the door, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I stared at the envelope for a few moments, my pulse beginning to quicken. I turned it over in my hands. There was no return address, just a case number and the words, "Marriage violation, subpoena." I froze. The words seemed to swim before my eyes. Marriage violation. Confused, I ripped open the envelope. What I read made my breath catch in my throat. Marriage violation. How could that be? I thought, my mind racing. I was married to Elena for 7 years. We had a home together, 2 children, one of whom was ours, the other from her first marriage. We had a normal life, a routine, a family. So why did this feel like the beginning of something I couldn't comprehend? The letter, printed in cold, impersonal text, explained that the validity of my marriage was being questioned. Not just questioned, but it had been declared non-existent in the eyes of the law. The subpoena was a request for my appearance in court, where I was to answer to charges related to a marriage violation. The letter mentioned something about Elena's previous marriage, her divorce, and the fact that, according to the legal documents, it appeared that she had never actually divorced her first husband. She'd married me while still technically married to someone else. The shock of it hit me like a cold slap across the face. I couldn't breathe. My legs felt weak. I had to sit down. How could this happen? I thought again, my mind trying to process the chaos swirling around me. Elena had never mentioned her ex-husband much, only in passing, small references here and there when it came to our son, Michael, who had been born after they'd separated. She'd always spoken of him like he was part of her past, like he was a ghost in her history that we both had long since moved on from. She'd told me they were over, that they had no further connections. It was something I had believed, something I'd trusted. But this was a betrayal that I hadn't even begun to understand. I tried to make sense of it, but the more I thought about it, the more questions arose. Had she ever been honest with me? How long had she been hiding this? 7 years. Our entire marriage. Was it all built on a lie? I sat at the table, staring at the subpoena, my hands trembling. I had no idea how to process this, how to approach her. I wanted to scream, to demand answers right then and there, but I knew I had to remain calm. If this was true, then I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with before confronting her. I put the letter down and walked into the kitchen. Elena was standing by the stove, humming quietly to herself as she flipped the pancakes. She looked so normal. How could she be so calm? Didn't she know that everything was about to change? Elena, I said, my voice almost betraying me as I spoke her name. She turned, a smile on her face, oblivious to the storm that was brewing. Yeah? She set the spatula down and wiped her hands on her apron, her eyes meeting mine. Her smile faded when she saw the look on my face. I need to talk to you about something. It's important. My voice was shaking slightly, and I hated how weak I sounded. She raised an eyebrow, concern slowly replacing the cheerfulness on her face. What's wrong? She asked, her voice soft. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I walked over to the counter, grabbed the envelope, and handed it to her. Her eyes scanned the words quickly. I saw her face go pale, her lips parting in shock as she read the letter, her fingers trembling slightly. Elena, what is this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. What is this about our marriage? She didn't say anything at first. For a moment we stood there in silence, her eyes glued to the paper as if it held the answers to a question she'd been trying to avoid for years. Finally, she folded the paper slowly, placing it back on the counter. I didn't think you'd ever find out, she said almost too quietly. I stared at her, feeling my anger rise. Find out about what? I demanded. That our entire marriage is a lie? That I've been living in a fantasy all these years? She looked down, her eyes clouded with guilt. I'm sorry, she whispered. I never meant for this to happen. I didn't know how to tell you. I took a step closer, my breath catching in my throat. Tell me what, Elena? I asked, my voice breaking. That I've been your second husband this whole time. Her silence told me everything, and that silence felt like the loudest thing in the world. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, the image of Elena's face, guilt, confusion, and avoidance all etched into her features, haunted me. How had I not seen the signs? How had I not felt the weight of the lie, the strain of deception, for all these years? The next morning, after a restless night, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the subpoena again. The words still swam before me, each line a punch to my gut. I had to understand what was going on, why this had happened, why Elena had done this to me, to us. But I couldn't just confront her again without answers. No, this time I had to be smarter. I had to gather the pieces, put them together myself. I took the day off work. I couldn't focus on anything else. This was bigger than any project, any deadline. I needed to know the truth, every last detail of it. I started my investigation by going through Elena's things. I hadn't been the kind of husband who snooped, who invaded her privacy. We had trust, or at least I thought we did. But now every drawer, every folder, every document seemed like a clue I needed to uncover. I dug through the file cabinet in the office, rifling through papers that should have been inconspicuous. Bank statements, bills, tax forms, anything that could shed light on what Elena had been hiding. And there it was, a letter, a faded envelope buried deep under a pile of old receipts and tax papers. It was from the city hall of a small town. My heart raced as I opened it, the words sinking in slowly. Dear Ms. Elena Carter, this is to inform you that your application for divorce from Mr. Adam Bennett has not been processed due to incomplete documentation. Please submit the required documents before the deadline. Adam Bennett, her first husband, the man she'd told me so little about. I stared at the letter, my fingers trembling. She had never divorced him. A wave of nausea washed over me. I couldn't believe it. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but they didn't make sense. How long had she been living this double life? How long had she been married to me, pretending to be free when, in fact, she was still bound to him legally? I felt like a fool. The whole time I had been playing the role of husband, father, thinking I had it all. I had no idea how deeply I'd been deceived. I needed more answers, though. One letter wasn't enough to fully grasp the extent of the betrayal. So I did what I had never done before. I reached out to Adam Bennett. It took a couple of days for him to respond, and when he did, it was through email. I almost didn't open it. Part of me wanted to pretend I hadn't even made contact, to stay in my little bubble of denial, but I couldn't. I needed to know. The email was short and cold. Daniel, you're not the first to find out, and you won't be the last. Elena and I had an agreement. She never wanted you to know about me. She never wanted you to know what we had. Our relationship was never as simple as it seemed. She was always free to be with whoever she wanted, but I never expected her to go this far, to make you think she was someone she wasn't. You're not the first man she's lied to. I'm sure you won't be the last. Good luck. I stared at the screen trying to process the words. It felt like a punch to the gut. An agreement? What the hell does that mean? I couldn't even begin to wrap my head around it. Elena had been playing some sort of game with me, and with him. She had told me nothing. We had a life together, a family, and yet it was all built on this sickening lie, this twisted arrangement that I hadn't even known existed. I knew what I had to do next. I had to confront her again. I had to face the woman I thought I knew. But there was more to this story. Something darker, something deeper that I wasn't yet ready to uncover. That night after the kids went to bed, I sat on the couch. Elena was sitting across from me, avoiding my gaze, her hands clenched in her lap. The silence between us felt suffocating. The tension hung thick in the air. I know, I said, my voice low, barely a whisper. I know about Adam. I know about the divorce. I know you've been lying to me this whole time. She didn't look at me. Her lips trembled and she wiped her eyes quickly, as though trying to hide the tears that were threatening to fall. I never meant for it to go this far, she whispered. I thought I could fix it all. I thought we could start fresh. You and me, Daniel. Start fresh? I repeated bitterly. While still married to him? While still holding on to this secret life? She wiped her eyes again, but the tears kept coming. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to lose everything. Not after we had Michael. Not after we had us. I stood up, my hands balled into fists at my sides. You've been playing me, Elena. You've been playing us both. You and Adam had some twisted deal, some free relationship, where I was just some guy you could have on the side. What the hell did you think I'd do when I found out? Her face crumpled as she sobbed. Please, Daniel, don't leave me. I never wanted to hurt you. I just didn't know how to stop. I couldn't look at her anymore. I couldn't listen to the excuses that came pouring out. The pain in my chest was growing, suffocating me, but I couldn't let her see it. Not now. Not until I had all the answers. I turned and walked out of the room, leaving her in a heap of tears behind me. I wasn't ready to forgive. I wasn't even sure if I ever could. I had to keep digging. I had to find out everything. Every secret, every hidden truth. And when I had it all, when I knew exactly what kind of person she had become, that's when I would make my move. But for now, I had to gather more. The investigation was far from over. The days after I found out about Adam felt like they dragged on in slow motion. I couldn't escape the weight of it, and every time I looked at Elena, I saw the lie in her eyes. I could hear her voice pleading for forgiveness, but all I felt was betrayal. Betrayal in its rawest form, the kind that cuts so deep you can't even recognize yourself anymore. She kept apologizing, but her words rang hollow, and every time she tried to explain, it only made the situation worse. She claimed it was a mistake. She never meant for things to get so complicated that everything had spiraled out of control. But I wasn't buying it. The damage had already been done, and no amount of apologies would fix what she had broken. I had to know everything. I had to hear it from Adam himself. After some careful planning, I arranged to meet him. The email he had sent me made it clear he wasn't exactly eager to talk, but I had to confront him. I needed to know why he'd allowed this to happen, why he had agreed to this twisted setup between him, Elena, and me. I wasn't prepared for how things went down when I met him. The location he suggested was an old quiet bar on the outskirts of town. It was a place I had never been, dark and dingy, with the smell of stale beer in the air. Adam was already sitting at a corner table, nursing a drink, as if he'd been waiting for this moment for a long time. He looked exactly like I imagined him, tall, lean, with dark eyes that didn't seem to have any warmth left in them. A man who had lived through years of cold decisions. His face hardened when he saw me approach, but he didn't look surprised, almost as if he had been expecting this moment too. I sat down across from him without saying a word. The silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. Finally he spoke. his voice low and raspy from the alcohol. "You've got questions," he said, his eyes narrowing as he studied me. "I'm not going to lie to you. It's not how I wanted this to go down, but it's the way things turned out." I took a deep breath, the anger still simmering inside me. "Why? Why the hell did you let me marry her if she was still tied to you? Was this some kind of game to you two?" Adam let out a bitter laugh, swirling his drink in the glass. "A game? Number. It wasn't a game. It was an arrangement. Elena and I, we've always had a different kind of relationship. We don't follow the same rules as other people. We never did." His words sent a chill down my spine. "A different kind of relationship? What does that even mean?" "We were separated when she met you," Adam continued, his gaze never leaving mine. "But we never really broke up, you know? We had an understanding. I'm not going to go into details, but the truth is, Elena never intended to stay with me. But she also wasn't ready to let go completely. She wanted her freedom, but she couldn't fully separate from me. So she found a way to keep both lives." I blinked, the shock of his words hitting me like a punch to the gut. "She kept you both? She had me thinking she was completely out of your life, that she had nothing left to do with you." He looked at me then, his eyes cold. "She had her reasons, Daniel. We've both been through a lot. But you're right about one thing. You were never supposed to find out. She was keeping the peace, playing both sides. And eventually, well, she ended up with you. But it wasn't just you she was lying to. She was lying to herself, too." I felt the room spinning. I didn't know how to react. Adam was giving me pieces of the puzzle, but they were fragmented, incomplete. His words weren't an apology, weren't even an attempt to make things right. They were the words of a man who had grown numb to it all. "So, you knew all along?" I asked, my voice thick with disbelief. "You knew she was with me? You knew she was pretending to be married to someone else? And you just let it happen?" Adam's gaze hardened. "You think I liked it? You think I enjoyed watching her play both of us? No, I didn't. But it wasn't my place to stop her. She had her reasons for doing what she did." I shook my head, frustration building inside me. "She destroyed everything. I trusted her. I loved her. And now I find out I'm just a pawn in some twisted game. Why the hell did you let me believe I was her only husband?" "I didn't have a choice," Adam replied, his tone hardening. "I wasn't the one who made the rules. Elena is who she is. And trust me, she's not a saint in this. She's been playing both sides for years. But don't get it twisted. You weren't just a pawn. She cared about you, Daniel. She really did. But that doesn't change the fact that she kept you in the dark." My chest tightened as his words hit me. The realization that I wasn't just the victim here, that there had been someone else, a partner in all of this, sent a wave of nausea through me. It wasn't just Elena who had betrayed me. It was the two of them, together. But I wasn't done yet. There was still more to uncover, more pieces to find. I couldn't let this be the end of the story. I had to confront Elena again. And this time I wasn't leaving until I had every single answer. When I returned home, I didn't speak to Elena immediately. I couldn't bring myself to face her yet. Instead, I spent hours pacing the living room, my mind racing through everything I had learned. I had so many questions, so many things that didn't make sense. Eventually, I couldn't hold back anymore. I found her in the bedroom, sitting on the bed with her hands clasped together, as if she were waiting for me. "Elena," I began, my voice low, barely audible. I spoke to him. Her face paled. "Adam?" I nodded. She didn't say anything, just looked down, her fingers tightening around each other. "What did he say?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Everything," I replied, my voice sharp. "Everything. The arrangement, the lies, the game you two played. Why didn't you ever tell me?" She looked at me then, her eyes filled with regret. "I didn't know how. I was afraid of losing you." "You lost me the moment you decided to keep me in the dark," I snapped. I stood there staring at her. She was crying now, her face a mixture of guilt and sorrow. But it wasn't enough. Not anymore. Her tears couldn't undo the years of deceit. They couldn't fix what had been broken. I turned away from her, my decision made. I wasn't going to let her tear my life apart any further. The truth had come out, and now it was time to end it. The days after my conversation with Elena felt like they were dragging me deeper into a pit, one I wasn't sure I could escape from. I had confronted her, gotten the truth, but it wasn't enough. I wasn't done yet. There was more I needed to know, more that I wasn't willing to let slide. I couldn't move forward without knowing just how far her betrayal had reached. It wasn't just the legal marriage I had found out about. It wasn't just the fact that Elena had been hiding her past from me. It was everything. The years, the lies, the pieces of herself she had hidden from me while building our life together. I needed to know more, needed to see the full picture of the woman I had thought I loved. And so I decided to dig even deeper. I spent the next couple of days obsessively combing through every inch of our house. The thought of Elena's double life, that she had one world with me and another with Adam, one weekend at a time, made me sick to my stomach. I needed to understand how this all worked, how she managed to keep up the charade, how I had been so blind to it all. It wasn't until I went through the bookshelf in our bedroom that I found it. A journal hidden in the back of a drawer, a plain leather-bound book that hadn't caught my attention before. I opened it, hesitant, but the urge to know everything was overwhelming. What I found inside was nothing short of terrifying. The pages were filled with Elena's handwriting, small and neat, but her words were heavy with guilt. The first few pages were innocuous enough, notes about the kids, her thoughts on our life together. But as I flipped through, I found the real truth, the hidden truth. The entries started to shift around the time Michael was born. She wrote about the strain between us, about how she felt torn between her duties as a wife to me and her unspoken connection with Adam. I could feel her struggle in the words, her internal conflict. It was clear she had always loved me, but there was something else, something darker that she wasn't telling me. The deeper I read, the more my chest tightened. She had been going back to Adam for weekends, weekends I had never suspected, while I was home with the kids thinking everything was fine. There were long, detailed accounts of her trips to see him, the free weekends they shared. But the worst part? She had written about how she felt nothing during these weekends, how she was numb, how she used Adam for the sake of her own happiness, but never really loved him anymore. In one particularly painful entry, she wrote, "I don't know how to explain it to Daniel. He's so good to me. He loves me the way I want to be loved. But there's this emptiness, this part of me that needs something else. Adam doesn't make me happy, but he knows me. I don't want to hurt Daniel, but I'm afraid if I don't keep this part of my life, I'll lose a piece of myself. I can't let go of him, even though I know I should." I read that passage over and over. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what she had done, how she had justified these secret trips, these secret weekends behind my back. But the journal didn't stop there. As I turned the pages, I found more. More of her inner turmoil, more of the lies she told me. But then something changed. Her writing grew darker, more resigned. "I don't know how to keep this up anymore. Daniel is a good man. He deserves better. But I don't know if I can give him that. Adam wants me back. He says we can make it work. But I don't know if I can go back to that life. I don't know what to do." I slammed the journal shut, feeling the weight of her words crashing over me. Every lie, every weekend, every moment she had stolen from me and kept from me, it was all in these pages. She had kept this part of herself hidden, even from me. Even when we had shared a life together, when I had trusted her with everything, she had been lying. It was all one big lie. That night I confronted her again. I didn't care about her tears, her apologies. I wasn't interested in her guilt anymore. I was done with all of that. I sat her down, the journal between us. The silence was unbearable, heavy with the knowledge of what I had just uncovered. "You've been living two lives, Elena," I began, my voice steady, cold. "I've read your journal. I know about the weekends. I know about Adam. I know about the game you've been playing with me." Her face went pale. "Daniel, I never wanted you to know. I never wanted to hurt you. It was just easier this way." "Easier?" I repeated, the anger building in my chest. "You think it was easier to lie to me? To keep all of this hidden? You think it was easier to have me raise our children while you spent weekends with your ex-husband?" I didn't want to hurt you, she pleaded, her voice breaking. I didn't want to lose you. You don't understand. I didn't know how to tell you the truth. I was scared. I scoffed, shaking my head. You were scared of me. You were scared of losing me? You've been playing me, Elena. You've been keeping me in the dark. I've been nothing more than a tool for you to fill some empty space in your life. And you think you can just apologize and make everything okay? She stared at me, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, Daniel. I never meant for this to go this far. I never wanted you to find out like this. I'm done, I said, my voice tight. I can't do this anymore. I stood up, the anger inside me so strong I could barely control it. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make her understand just how much she had hurt me. But I knew better than to let my rage take control. I had been living in a lie, and now it was time to get out of it. But as I walked away, something inside me clicked. It wasn't over. I wasn't done. Not yet. Elena had taken everything from me, and I wasn't going to walk away quietly. I was going to make her face the consequences of her actions, and I was going to make sure I got what I deserved. The anger had consumed me for days. It was like a fire, burning through every thought, every piece of me that once knew peace. But it wasn't just anger anymore. It was a deep, cold resolve. I wasn't going to let Elena walk away from this unscathed. I wasn't going to be her victim, the one left to pick up the pieces of a life she had shattered without a second thought. I had spent enough years in the dark, trusting her, loving her. Now the truth had come crashing down around me, and I wouldn't let it go without consequence. I started my plan quietly. I knew I had to move carefully, methodically. I wasn't just going to leave Elena. I wasn't going to just file for a divorce and let her move on like it was nothing. No, I needed to take back everything she had stolen from me, expose her for what she truly was, and make sure she paid for every lie. The first step was getting proof. Solid, undeniable proof. The journal was a start, but I needed more than just words. I spent hours combing through our finances, digging through old emails and making calls to anyone who might know something about the life she had been hiding. It didn't take long to find out that Elena had kept accounts in both her and Adam's names, shared assets that I hadn't been aware of. She had lied on forms, hidden things that were right in front of me. But there was more. I learned that the weekends she spent with Adam were not just getaways, they were planned trips, arranged months in advance. She had even been using our joint credit cards to pay for some of these excursions. The lies were everywhere, like a tangled web I was only beginning to pull apart. Once I had everything, I made my move. I hired a lawyer who specialized in divorce and custody battles, someone who wasn't going to be swayed by Elena's tears or her false charm. I wanted someone who would fight for me, who would see through the mask she had worn for so long. Then I set up the meeting. I wanted it to be public. I wanted everyone to see the real Elena, the woman who had ruined everything. I reached out to her family, her closest friends, and told them I was going to expose her, that I would be filing for divorce, but it wouldn't stop there. I wanted to make sure they knew exactly who they were dealing with. The day of the meeting arrived, and I was ready. Elena had no idea what was coming. She thought this would be just another conversation, another attempt to salvage the wreckage of our marriage. But this time, there was no more pretending. There would be no more apologies. I stood in the living room, holding the folder of evidence in my hand. I could hear her footsteps in the hallway, the sound of her soft breath as she approached. When she entered the room, her face was already flushed with emotion. She could see something in my eyes. Something had shifted. "Daniel, please," she started, her voice shaky. "I know you're hurt. I know you're angry, but—" "You don't know anything, Elena," I interrupted, my voice steady, colder than I had ever heard it. "You've been lying to me for years. You've been living a double life, playing me and Adam like we're fools. But I'm not the fool anymore." She froze, her eyes widening as she glanced at the folder in my hands. "What is this?" she whispered. "Proof," I said, my voice laced with bitterness. "Proof that you've been lying to me, that you've been hiding things from me. I know about the weekends. I know about Adam. I know everything." Her face drained of color as she took a step back. "Daniel, please," she begged, her voice breaking. "I didn't want you to find out. I never wanted this to happen. You never wanted this to happen? I cut her off, my anger flaring again. You never wanted it to happen? What about all those times you went behind my back? What about the lies? You didn't just keep a secret. You destroyed everything we built. You destroyed me. She was silent for a moment, her face a mask of guilt. Then she spoke, her voice trembling. I was afraid. I didn't know how to tell you the truth. I didn't know how to let go of him. I never meant to hurt you, Daniel. Please believe me. I shook my head. You don't get to ask for my belief now, Elena. You've lost that privilege. What you do get is a taste of what it feels like to be betrayed. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm taking the kids. Her eyes widened in shock. You can't do this. You can't take them from me. I'm their mother. You haven't been their mother, I snapped. You've been living in your own little world, while I've been the one raising them. I'm not letting you use them as some excuse to get off easy. I'm fighting for full custody, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who you really are. I reached for the folder and threw it down in front of her, letting the evidence spread out across the table. Every financial statement, every lie, every weekend trip. The truth laid bare in front of her, and there was no escaping it now. She stared at it, her hands trembling. Please, she whispered, her voice barely audible now. I'm sorry, Daniel. I was wrong. I don't know what else to say. Please, don't do this. But it was too late for apologies. The damage was done. I'm not here for your apologies, I said coldly. I'm here to make sure you never do this to anyone again. I'm going to ruin your reputation, Elena. I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who you are. And then, I'm taking the kids. I'm leaving, and you'll have to live with the mess you made. She looked like she might collapse right there, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered everything. The lies, the betrayal, the years she had stolen from me. I turned away, walking toward the door, with one last glance back at her. I'm done, Elena. This is over. The divorce was finalized within months. I fought tooth and nail for full custody, and with all the evidence I had gathered, I won. Elena lost everything. Her reputation, her marriage, her role as a mother. She was left with nothing but the consequences of her choices. As for me, I left with the children, and we started our new life. The pain of the past didn't disappear overnight, but I knew I had done the right thing. I had exposed her for who she really was, and in the end, I had the freedom to rebuild my life. And Elena? She was left with the pieces of a life she had broken, and I finally was free.